We're also going to need to look at the alternative minimum tax. Look, this was a tax that was created in 1969, and it was, the intention of it, I think there were about 155 Americans, for one reason or another, that were multi-millionaires that for whatever reason weren't paying any taxes, so they came up with a tax on them, the alternative minimum tax. It's never been indexed, and over time it keeps ensnaring more middle-class Americans. There are estimates now that next year the alternative minimum tax is going to hit 25 million Americans. Why that's important to all of us is that impacts small business owners. And if small business owners get another tax, that means those are fewer jobs that we're going to create and then continue to move us in the wrong direction. Now the same goes for the regulatory regime. I will tell you that we talk about the centralization of power. There is a bill right now before the Congress called Rein In, and it is an attempt to try to roll back the excessive influence of our bureaucracy. It says that any time that the bureaucracy enacts a regulation that impacts $100 million or greater in the economy, it has to go to the people's house. The people's house have to vote up or down. Why that's important is you get the check. And if your representative doesn't vote the way you think is smart, you can fire him. You can fire me in 2 years if I don't get it right. But that's why that's got to happen. It's not about it's about accountability. And right now the problem with the bureaucracy is it's unelected. You know, you can't get at the thing. And it's holding up growth. It's holding up growth. And I'll say that's only the first thing. Then we also need to bring balance together. We need to bring more balance in terms of how we approach all things, in terms of the environment and the economy, safety in the economy, labor and management. Because balance, if you think about it, balance is how we got this genius design in the first place. The checks and balances. And that's what I would maintain to you, is that we're out of balance. We're out of balance in terms of too much power in Washington, and we the people, we're at the short stick right now. And we're going to have to address that. The health care bill. Look, I mean, there's so many things that are wrong. We can't save this bill. We're going to end up with higher premiums. You've already seen it. You've seen your estimates coming out for January. We're getting crushed on this. You know, higher taxes. This is hitting small business. There's 24 sets of new taxes in this bill. Not the least of which, we could go on, but the 3.8%, if you try to sell your home, you're going to have a new tax on your real estate. Medical device, which hits our area here, 2.3%. And it goes on and on. Regulations, the 1099 requirement. For any vendor now, in excess of $600, you're going to end up having to issue a 1099. This is going to really hurt our small businesses. More big government. At a time that we need to be shrinking the size of the federal government, we created a couple dozen new commissions and boards, and some estimates 16,500 new IRS workers to enforce that bill. Ladies and gentlemen, they have nothing to do with your health care. You know, we're moving in the wrong direction, but we're going to need health care reform. We've absolutely got to have health care reform, because right now the costs continue to rise multifold beyond inflation. What we need is a bill that uses free market forces, get access to insurance companies across state lines. We need to understand more about where our healthcare costs are. Right now, the system is a summary of benefits with a copay, and we need to understand more about that so we can shop around more in terms of where we get our services and medical care. And we need the tort reform. We need the tort reform in terms of what it'll do to drive down the medical malpractice insurance, but that's only the first order effect. That'll help costs, but it also brings stability to the system so we don't have doctors practicing defensive medicine practices, which happens all the time now. We need tort reform. With this package, which you're going to see, and by the way, this package I just suggested to you is not a panacea. It's not going to solve all what's wrong with America, but what it will do is start moving us in the right direction. And that's the problem. Right now, we're not moving in the right direction. But what this will do is give our small business owners, they will have more bottom line, and all of us will have more disposable income. That is the stimulus. The stimulus comes from us. 2/3 of our economy is consumer spending driven. And when we have more in our pocket to spend, and when small business has more to recapitalize, that's what's in to hire new workers and expand. This is what's going to grow our economy. You look for this. I think you're going to see more and more of this in the coming weeks and months, because even my opposition understands this now. But this is something we should have been doing 20 months ago. Okay, getting the private sector economy going, that's job number one. But job number two is, and it's not much, it's basically coexistent with number one, is reining in this spending. The reason why we start with the economy is it gets a lot easier to balance your budget when you're not paying 10% in social services for unemployment and everything else. And you're actually, when you get that down to structural unemployment, maybe 3-4%, and you're actually paying less in social services and bringing more in revenues, that's your first step. The second step is last year, the budget, when they did pass it, last year was an 8% increase in discretionary spending. That's unbelievable. You know, that's reckless. We need to roll that back. I also maintain we need to cut the size of the government. You know, we've got too much government.